Cheer. Where we at? Where we at? See Simone.
Hi, and welcome back to Learning to Live in Translation, the podcast about what happens when language, culture, and expectation collide. I'm C. Simone. Last week, we unpacked the beauty and complications faced by my guests, Sophia, Kaya, and Katrina, as they spoke about growing up with a biracial identity. Today is part 2 with my other special guests. These guests are my Dulka Tukara. That's Hindi for close to my heart. We're joined by Leila, my sister, a brilliant telecom tech, keeping people connected and solving their issues, a fantastic mother, a loyal companion. We're also joined by Jade, my sister, a podcast host of On the Shelf, a creative with an acting background with an entrepreneurial spirit. And last but not least, my cousin-in-law and by heart, Jess, another brilliant mother, a certified TEFL tutor, a woman who goes after her dreams. Coming up.
I was quite ashamed of for a while because I was a little bit embarrassed. I didn't really know much about it.
How do you get your hair like that?
I know it would be different if I'd grown up somewhere else.
Growing up in a multicultural family can have its quirks. I remember hearing so many dialects. No elbows on the table. 2, stop your lying now. 2, tell me one thing, tell me something. 2, turn that light off. 2, what's going on, fam? Even with friends, we would learn about their cultural phrases. So much fun. There are pros and cons in the experiences of growing up between worlds. Some feel rooted in identity and others experience lacking the family connection, yet discover in their thread of personality, hints of their DNA are reflected. You may relate to growing up between worlds even if you lived in a monocultural home. Perhaps you felt you had to hide parts of who you are, but could easily share those with friends or strangers. Let's dive into speaking with my guests. Jess, what was it like for you growing up as mixed race in London?
Being half Indian and half English has had its challenges. I have never really felt fully accepted by either side. But fortunately, I have had a really good experience with the African and Caribbean community, who I felt I gravitated more towards. So that was a positive factor for me.
Wow, it's difficult to not be fully accepted by either side of the family. Yeah, it's great you experienced a positive reflection of how some parts of London can be, where various communities come together. I know you've had people guess where you're from. How has that been?
It's fun when people can't guess where I'm from, because sometimes I like to play on that and, break the stereotype of how an English/Asian race person should be, how they should look like and how they should act.
No truer words. It's great to break stereotypes. Leila, how was it for you growing up in London as mixed race before moving to another city?
For me, being mixed race in London didn't actually matter. I didn't feel like my race was my identity. It was just part of who I was. And that is because I had other mixed race friends, so I felt included in that. But I also had friends from Africa, Asia, Turkey. It was more of a I'm proud to be rather than a what are you, where are you from? It was never you're different, because everyone was different. I didn't experience it as being an issue. And I think that's the same actually for a lot of my friends who were mixed race, in the respect of we were just friends. There was never I'm from here, you're from there. One of my best friends was half African, and I loved that because her dad would make food from Swaziland. And I thought, I've never had this before. And it was more of a experience of trying new things rather than you're different to me, I don't like it, which has been, I know, other people's experiences who are mixed race or get put in the you're not black enough, you're not white enough category. I didn't actually experience that. But because my mum is black, I've been brought up as you are black. Yes, you're mixed race, but you'll always be seen as black. And that is how I've always identified.
That's exactly how growing up should be, and life in general, where it doesn't matter where people are from in order to be friends. Yet, unfortunately, the world we live in doesn't lend itself to everyone experiencing this. Jade, tell us about your experience growing up in London as biracial.
Hey there. So I grew up in East London on the tail end of the 90s and the start of the 2000s. That was my childhood. London has changed so much from when I was a child. Let me take you back. So I grew up in Hackney. It was nowhere near as gentrified as it is now. We would play out on the streets till our mums called for dinner. We would go to markets with Dad on Saturdays to buy cocoa bread from Pops. I grew up with plenty of friends from a variety of backgrounds, Asian, mixed, black, white. It didn't matter as long as we could play tag or Barbie. We were friends.
Good memories. I remember playing like Knock Down Ginger and hide and seek and just having fun. It didn't matter at all where people were from. Leila, having moved from London, but still, of course, visiting our family there, what do you think of London now?
I've grown up in London. I wish I'd have stayed there longer, to be honest. I loved the fact that when I went to school, it was just friends. There wasn't us and them about anything because there were so many people from so many different places that it was just like a melting pot of different cultures. African friends, Caribbean friends, white friends, Asian friends, Chinese friends, Polish friends. It was just people. There wasn't this is our side, this is your side, which is what it was like in Leicester. So yeah, I loved going around to I don't know if you remember Jacqueline, but Jacqueline's house and having the food there. Her mum did obviously a lot of Nigerian food. And yeah, just experiencing different people's cultures was the best thing about it for me.
Yeah, I do remember Jacqueline. What a lovely family. And that's just it. There's such an opportunity to get to know other cultures, and some just miss out due to ignorance. Jess, you mentioned gravitating towards different cultures in particular. Did this impact your identity?
Yeah, I've had like an identity issue for like a large part of my life, and it wasn't until I met Midi's dad Vaughan who helped me try and connect to my Indian side and embrace it, because he wanted me to teach Midi more about her culture, which I was quite ashamed of for a while because I was a little bit embarrassed. I didn't really know much about it, but as I'm maturing and becoming older, I'm just like, wow, there's so many beautiful things about my culture that I just never knew about because I never grew up with the Asian side of my family. I only see them maybe once in the blue moon. I grew up with my dad who's English, so he would always talk about the world and geography, so that obviously helped. He wasn't like a typical English guy that was just like, fish and chip Friday or going down the pub. Like, he's very, very worldly in that sense. I'm now into yoga, Ayurvedic healing, this astrology, cosmology, it shows in my cooking, even like my fashion choices. I realized that it has always influenced me. I've just never known where that side of me has come from, but it's obviously in my blood, in my DNA. And as well with the English side, I'm like, English people have no tradition and they don't have like anything really, but that's not true. We have like beautiful countryside. I'm in touch with nature, and there are some nice things like having a cup of tea and biscuits, and sometimes, that comes out in me as well. And having like my nan born in East London within the sound of the Bow Bells, and how proud she was to call herself a true Cockney because of it.
I can imagine her voice. I remember growing up and hearing a lot of Cockney accents, especially when watching EastEnders. Ricky, Bianca, get out my pub. The good old days. There's a lot of division now showing up in London and in other cities in comparison to what we were all aware of when we were kids, when we were growing up. What are your thoughts on this, Jade?
Being someone who is of dual heritage, I've always struggled to understand the racial divide. Surely it isn't something that should matter if we get along. Whilst that was and still is my rosy-eyed view of the world, I'm aware that that is not the case for everyone.
Yeah.
So true. There's so many issues with division, a lot of ignorance and racism, which, Jade, I know you've faced.
Of course, I've dealt with racism. So many of us, unfortunately, have. The difference is with being from a mixed background is that sometimes it feels like you don't really have a place. Whereas you get support if you're whole from a background. I personally have felt that there isn't that support. Code switching becomes part of the everyday. That was something that me and my siblings grasped pretty quickly, because you're too white, you're too black, you're not enough of this and you're not enough of that. Those were daily reminders for us. And whilst London is a great place, there is still so much racism is quite covert here. And yeah, that's my experience.
I feel like the whole race thing has been more of an issue. I've become more aware of it, should I say, as I've got older. But what annoys me is that we always get the colourism argument. You're not dark skinned, so you don't know what it's like. And it's like, well, actually, what you're saying is colourist in itself, because it's like, well, we're not dark skinned, so we're not included.
Leila, you've also experienced like ignorant comments, and I love your responses. Give us an example.
Like, you know, oh, what? How do you get your hair like that? Well, it just grows out my head like this.
That's from someone who is uneducated about your culture.
Exactly. Any advice any of you would give to people regarding either facing sweeping comments or racism?
The best advice I could offer is to talk to your friends and family about how it makes you feel. And if it was something we could solve, that would be great. But unfortunately, it seems to be an ongoing thing. And it sucks. It really sucks. But yeah, that would be my advice. And to try not to let such comments get to you.
How about any advice for people living between two worlds?
My piece of advice is to be open-minded, but to be yourself, and people will love you for who you are. You will find your crowd. Might not be the first set of people or friends that you meet, but you can only be you, and you are great as you are. So just be yourself and open up, have an open heart when you go and meet people. And that would be my one piece of advice.
The advice I would give people that are suffering with identity issues or growing up between two cultures is the fact that you do not have to choose one. You are, you know, your own person at the end of the day, and you can choose bits from both cultures that resonate with you the most and explore them as much as you are willing to do.
Thanks so much, everyone, for sharing your experiences. Another insightful show. To our audience, growing up between two worlds is an opportunity to deepen an understanding of different cultures and to rise in whatever parts you resonate with. It's a form of living in translation. And if you want to continue hearing real stories, like and subscribe. Until next time, thank you for tuning into the show. I'm C. Simone, and this is Learning to Live in Translation.
Yeah. London. L-O-N, B-O-N. City we live in. Where we at, where we at, where we at.